Welcome, everyone, to another really fun episode of Indie Reads Aloud. One of my favorite authors is returning today to read for you. His name is Xander Cross. Welcome, Xander. I'm so glad you're back.
I'm absolutely happy to be here.
We always have such a good time together. Before we get started, though, I want to make sure that everyone knows in advance there is a listener advisory for today's episode for strong language, violence, and mature situations. So if you have little ears nearby, you might want to preview this episode before you share it with them. For those of you who have not met Xander yet, he holds a bachelor's degree in history, which he uses to write his paranormal fiction. A lifelong enthusiast of Japanese culture and folklore, Xander cosplays as a kitsune yokai on occasion, and photographic evidence can be found on Instagram and Pinterest, and on the cover photo for today's episode as well. He has published a short novella series as an adjunct to the Atlas Dystopia Apocalypta entitled Come by Night, coming out shortly in paperback at a store near you. Also, he's written for anthologies with really creative stuff and just a host of. Just look him up. You'll be happy when you find everything that Xander's written. Today, Xander's going to read from The Dragon Game. This is book 2 in the series, correct, Xander?
Yes, it is, and holds a wonderful place in my heart. It's the book that was the easiest to write. It wrote itself.
So far. I mean, you've
So
got 20 in the series, so
yeah. So far,
let's.
book two is one of my. It's actually my favorite one so far. It just
Okay.
came.
So what is it about this book in particular that makes it your favorite? Is it just that it was easier to write, or is there something specific about it?
The fact that it just seemed to come together, and how everything just. It was like divinely inspired. I don't know just how everything came together with even the very end with the plot, how it just, how he ends up like defeating the Gashidokuro, all of it. It just worked. And also there's a couple scenes that are really hard in there for people, but they just are really just, I don't know, they move me.
Okay.
And they sometimes, and I understand they move a lot of people to tears. They actually kind of make me messed up too, but.
So before you begin the reading, what is it
Feels.
about the Dragon Game Book 2? Because Origin of the White Wind, I gotta tell you folks, an amazing story. This is how I became hooked on Xander. Was book 1 was just incredible. So what do we need to know before you start your reading today, for people who haven't read book 1?
Well, in book one, we have a divine messenger of Inario Kame, who happens to be this sort of angelic fox creature. That's the only way I can sort of put it.
Right.
There's a whole history and a lore to it that some people are extremely familiar with. And this character, being a divine messenger, just he gets dumped on our planet. He doesn't know why. He has lost his divine grace, and eventually he falls and turns into a demon. And that's when all the fun begins. He becomes a yakuza, and that's where he's at right now in his history. The first 4 books take place in him in Japan, and specifically New Tokyo, in the year. Where is this one? I think this one's
2121 is what I have in my show notes.
2121 is when this one takes place. I wrote this one in 2020. So yeah, this was in 2121, a couple years after after Origin of the White Wind, after they've won their war and they've become the de facto rulers of New Tokyo, or at least the, Hayate's boss. Hayate's the main character. Hayate's boss becomes the ruler of New Tokyo. He helps put him there. And now comes the aftermath of that, of how this, great dragon creature is running everything. And unfortunately, all these other different city states that are actually capitals of well known throughout the East, like Shanghai, Singapore, Beijing, they all have dragons too. And every 12 years, they get together and they have a council of dragons. So what's happened now is, for the first time ever, Yoda, who has now become, is only 600 years old, all the other dragons hate him. He's less than 1,000 years old, and he has become Emperor of Japan. They don't like that. They're very upset, and some of them want to kill him outright. And they don't want him to even be a part of their little council. But regardless, or I should say, regardless, it's that's vernacular around here. Regardless, I have to keep that out of my writing so hard. Regardless, welcome to Baltimore.
Right.
But regardless, I don't even know what I was saying.
So
It's going to be fun.
So
he gets to go to the council, and to make matters even more fun, Yoda has chosen to make Hayate his chief of security at this affair, where all these other dragons and their attendant yokai that are really, badass, they can beat up. They make them fight each other for betting on and fun.
And just so that the people who haven't read book one understand, Hayate is a fox.
Yes, he is a fox demon, which means he's a shapeshifter. He can take all kinds of different forms, as well as his actual three proper forms, which means a white, fluffy, cute, adorable fox. He also looks like a really, hot dude. And
like a gangster fox.
Like a gangster fox. And he can also look like this really huge, almost like a cross between a fox and Slender Man, that floats in the air, and it has wicked long claws, and it just has smoke roiling off of it. Its kimono is blood soaked with every one it's slain and all that stuff. And it's
very fun.
Very, very wicked and evil. And it's the kind of thing that when people see it, they'd have to throw madness checks to make sure that they wouldn't go insane seeing this creature looming out of the shadows out of them.
Right.
Pale white, super long and gangly, and just,
very, very, very creepy folklore, scary stuff.
Yeah, very cruel looking creature with a long muzzle.
Yeah, I like him when he's cute and fluffy. So, but that's just me. All right, Xander, please, when you are ready, take the microphone and read aloud.
So I'm going to set us up.
Awesome.
Now getting ready to go to this Council of Dragons, and we're going to meet them all for the first time, especially the one that really wants to bring Yoda down. Actually, two that really want to bring Yoda down. So here we go. Chapter 7, Entrance. The limo turned into a large estate surrounded by acres of Zen gardens, all green and blossoming. I watched flowers wave in the pleasant breeze out the window. Along the way, there was a small man-made lake with a bridge, wooded copses, and as we drew near the huge hotel, even a small shrine. Color me amused to see it was in recognition of Inari. I ignored the small ache in my heart upon seeing those white stone foxes flanking the torii gate. That was another life, I told myself. Focus on the present. In the center of such landscape splendor arose the magnificent reproduction of a Japanese castle, ancient in appearance. In many respects, I felt I had gone back in time. It was here that we would be spending the next 5 days. With the exception of Katashi, none of us had ever been to this sort of elite affair. I want to tell you that I was blissfully confident in my arrogance. My fellow yokai thoroughly shot so. Surely thought so. It was a facade. For all my ambition, and I had plenty, I knew I was in way over my head. I was about to sink or swim. The lessons Katashi had given me could not prepare me for the shock of getting thrown into the deep end. Worse, there were hungry sharks in these waters. Nor was I alone in my nerves. We all acted cool on the surface. We had to. But the little signs were there if you knew where to look. Yoda's jaw was tense, clenching, an occasional waft of smoke emanating from his thin nostrils. Fuyuko repeatedly inspected her immaculate cyber blue fingernails. Shiro adjusted the knot of his tie at random. Takeshi stared forlornly out the window, disappointed with his latest kanabo. Even Katashi was thumping his good foot on the floor, arms crossed tight over his cake of a chest. I pretended to meditate, but that was a joke. I took slow, deep breaths that did little to calm me. When we pulled up to the castle itself, I was genuinely relieved. The energy changed in an instant. We put our game faces on, the time for fear and doubt now over. We had to be as bold and cunning as we had been during the war, committed in our resolve. Nothing less would do here. Here we go, Shiro mumbled to my left. I suppressed a shiver of anticipation. Famous last words, I quipped to break the tension. You got this, kid? Katashi asked me seriously. Irritating as it was, the Tanuki had spent the better part of 2 weeks preparing me for what lay ahead. As my lord's chief security, I was in the most critical position here. What cannot be avoided must be embraced. I gave him a sinister smile and climbed out of the limo. We took position as we exited, already on high alert. When Yoda stepped out, we flanked him, myself and Shiro in front, right and left, Fuyuko and Katashi behind us, with Takeshi taking up the central rear. We walked straight into the dragon's den, knowing we would be scorched and acting like we dared them to try. The screen doors were automated and pulled back with a whisper when the sensors registered our presence. The room within was less traditional than the outer facade suggested. Everything smelled new, and it shone that way too. This giant chunk of coveted real estate would open for business after the distinguished conference. It was squeaky clean and perfectly temperature controlled. Too bad that either did little to reduce the draconic stench of brimstone. 18 dragons in human aspect and their chosen henchmen lounged in the immense lobby among quasi-traditional modern furnishings, waiting for the last to arrive. This was a casual opening ceremony of sorts, and everyone was expected to present themselves before settling into their assigned lodgings. We all had to see one another up front, no surprises, the better to freely assess our rivals. The 6 of us looked like snazzy gangsters in a room full of them. Every dragon had his or own posse of 5 badass yokai, some of them enhanced with cybernetics. No lie, it was a tough crew in there. I had already memorized the dossier of every dragon and demon in the room. But there was one thing in particular that stuck out to me. Not a single other demon fox was among them. Protocol demanded that he who hosted arrive last. That honor was supposed to be Yoda's for the summit. And for the most part, the hidebound old monsters kept to their ancient ways. Breaking tradition is practically unheard of. No one would suffer that dishonor. Except one, that is. If we had an enemy intent on personally destroying us, it was Empress Li, Hirashi's mate. Her title was not in vain. As the Queen of Beijing, the capital of China, she dictated policy for her country. She was the literal empress of China, in the same way that Hirashi had been emperor of Japan, as Yoda was now. And that did not sit well with the Japanese dragons in particular, although Empress Li had every reason to despise Youta Clan. When she brooded this summer, she must take another dragon to seed her eggs. Yoda's takeover had denied her the strongest male. A fire dragon, Empress Li's reputation was fierce and terrible. To make matters worse, this close to brooding, the normally cold and calculating dragoness was hormonal as hell. She was sure to make this week thoroughly miserable and dangerous for us. Her absence this morning was a deliberate snub, the first of many. It was Yoda-sama's first test. It would not be his last. I separated myself from the pack and felt the eyes on me as I crossed the room. Ignoring them, I strode purposefully to the woman who was in charge of overall security. She too was cybernetically enhanced, and no fool. She watched my approach with cool, detached eyes that said she already knew who and what I was. Doubtless she had a digital dossier on every person in this room downloaded into her head and was accessing a full analysis right now. Daisuke Dono, she said smoothly, confirming my assessment. In less than a second, I became the center of attention. Eyes, particularly of dragons, swung toward me. My ego got off on it, but the smart part of me was not happy. Why else had Yoda brought me here but to show off his pet wild fox, a former divine animal? Still, I wondered what it was about my name that got this much attention. Then I heard the whispers. Fallen, defiled Shinshi. Look at the rice god's vermin, followed by a round of demonic snickers. One deep, draconic voice rumbled, Sent. My clan name was Zanko. For the first time, I realized I had been besmirching my celestial kin with the dishonor of my fall. It never occurred to me to fake a surname, not once, and I never paused to consider. Stupid. And just what the hell did scent mean anyway? I recovered swiftly. This was no place to betray even a moment's doubt or hesitation. Whatever my mistake, I had to own it like I did not care. I was Daisuke Hayate, the brazen Yakko of New Tokyo, and screw everyone else. You must be Masazaki-san. Hi, Daisuke Dono. You will wish to know all preparations have been seen to in advance. Tanabe Security is committed to excel. And that was when Her Highness swayed in. the Empress of Beijing. Now all eyes turned to her, mine included. At 195.58 centimeters, or 6'5", her curvy body slithered in a tight, shimmering bronze gown. Every step articulated raw sex, and she put off the pheromones to match. I thought she stank. It was impossible to deny her terrible beauty, however, or that she was soon ready to mate. Her long black hair flowed down to her ankles, the front elaborately pinned up, her ivory face painted to perfection. Her mustachios trailed from her temples. She was sex and power personified. I did not feel enticed. Instead, she made my skin crawl. Her wicked eyes raked over Yoda with open scorn for his age, as if to say, "How dare you stand in Hirashi's place, you unworthy worm?" Then she glanced at me. Cold waves of venomous hate radiated from her with the scent of musky, almost coil sulfur. I despised her immediately. Her entourage looked like a circus act, all of them, as beautiful and repugnant as she was, and more than a little ghastly. These were old, possibly deranged demons, and I did not like them either. The entire Beijing party behaved as if they were hosting the event on Hirashi's behalf. She even began to address the assembly. "Honorable congregation." Yoda cleared his throat and smiled congenially, cutting across her husky voice. She narrowed her merciless eyes at him, affronted that a 600-year-old water dragon should interrupt her imperial magnificence. And I thought I was vain. "I am most grateful for your assistance, Lee-san." He dared address her as an equal. "I know you have come a long way. Allow me." He was giving her a chance to save face while implying how poor her manners were. He stepped forward before she could speak further and address the room as befit his status. Like it or not, he was the present dragon of New Tokyo. No one here expected this turn of events, which I admit are irregular. I do hope you shall bear with me. I am younger, it is true, and I have a great deal to learn from such esteemed and highly honored company. I am happy to begin building my relationship with you, and I wish to lay any concerns to rest. I believe the course of this council, you shall find me most amenable to your wisdom." Every word was delivered smoothly, the speech polished without seeming rehearsed, which it surely was. No doubt there was bile in Yoda's throat to utter those words. The dragon seemed unmoved regardless. The majority were cold, uncompromising, quite unlike the hot-headed yokai youth that had put Yoda in power. The old beast did not want the upstart here, it was clear. Even his fellow water dragons were dismayed by what Yoda had done. Yet, in spite of their icy reception, my master held his head high, managing to appear congenial, conciliatory, and confident of his abilities. "Do not think for an instant that claiming a city makes you one of us," Empress Lee hissed. A thin wreath of smoke issued from her thin nostrils. "You are a pathetic usurper." Now, dearly," Jin, the golden dragon of Shanghai, drawled. He was one of the new frontrunners to mate with her. "Everyone deserves a chance, even young worms under 1,000, I suppose." His polished voice dripped disdain. "We will meet in council and discuss our business there. This is the way it has always been done." The other dragons nodded in agreement. Lee glared defiantly at all of them. They appeared entirely unperturbed by her ire. Another water dragon, the Lord of Askioto, gazed long at Yoda, and not without sympathy. Katashi had informed me that this was Yoda's former mentor, related in some fashion, and of them all the most receptive to us. But just now he looked concerned with a hint of sadness. The weight of that stare gave me pause. There were layers of meaning writ there. He turned those sage eyes to me. I bore the weight and somehow managed not to twitch. Then the tension passed. The formalities were now dispensed with, and everyone was free to go to their rooms, located in different areas to keep us from murdering one another. Outside the MMA ring, that sort of thing was frowned upon with stiff penalties. The lobby gradually emptied. I smiled at the Tanabe security woman. "I should guess everything is in order?" I asked. "Of course, Daisuke-san," she said professionally. "If there are concerns, you may address them at any time." Her cool gaze suggested that I did not interest her at all. But for me, the reverse was rather true, and her attitude, I admit, was part of it. I nodded and went back to my group, exiting stage right. Yes, I thought to myself. that woman is the one I want this week. And should I end there?
Super fun. Oh my, I'm just, it was hard for me to find the unmute button because I was so engrossed in your story. Thank you so much. I love it when you read. You put such wonderful depth of emotion into your characters, and it truly comes out when you read aloud.
You want to know where I got that? The show Beauty and the Beast. George R. R. Martin wrote for Beauty and the Beast back then. And on that show with Catherine Hamilton, yeah, that's her. What's her name? Anyway, Ron Perlman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, I know. Yes,
the
Beauty and the
tunnels and
Beast
the
TV
line.
show with
Yeah,
Ron Perlman. Yes,
the original one. Yeah,
yes. She
that
went
one.
on to play in Terminator. Same actress. And now
Yes,
her name
Linda.
escapes.
That's her name.
Linda
Linda.
Hamilton. That's who it is. Yep.
She played a character named Catherine. That's where I got that. So okay,
Yes.
so that there's the character father Roger Treese, and by the way, he actually reads for George R. R. Martin's series, so A Song of Ice and Fire, before he died. And there's an entire episode devoted to where Vincent tells father, I can see everything that you've read because you've read them in their voices. Basically, he didn't say it in those words, but that was the connotation, that you took
Yeah.
me there because you read for them.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
And
Yeah.
and when you hear Roy Treese read for A Song of Ice and Fire, you hear it. He makes all these different voices for all the different characters. And that's when I thought, that's how I'm going to read.
And you do a very, very good job of it. Thank you so much, Xander. I'm looking forward to you coming back and reading for us again.
I'm always happy to.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.